it's easy to completely ruin a brand new bike. We're going to go through the biggest setup mistakes people make with friend of the channel, Bike Fit James, so you can avoid knee pain, numb hands, neck pain, saddle sores, and more. Over to James.
Number one, the single biggest pitfall of setting up your bike at home is getting the saddle too high. I would say 9 times out of 10 people coming through here for a bike fit, the saddle is too high. Bike fitters set saddles too high. Bike shops set saddles too high. And essentially, when we're talking about saddle height, we're actually referencing leg extension and how a rider's leg extends through the bottom of the pedal stroke. And it is the precursor for the rest of the bike setup in the sense that this is your engine room. This needs to stay more or less fixed. And it's then a question of how that front end interacts with the rest of it. The reason saddle height is so important is because it is what in fact impacts your muscle enlistment. So if the saddle is too high, it will typically result in you being quadricep dominant. It can also result in you falling into the front of the bike. We've also had very strong correlations between a rider listing to one side, because usually people list to one side, they don't overextend both legs, they preference one over the other, and that results in saddle issues. Most saddle issues come about as a result of the saddle being too high. So the question really is like, why? Where did this come from? A lot of it is legacy driven. If you go back to the sort of 80s and 90s when bicycle design was radically different, but also, most importantly, crank length was built to a finite size. By that I mean the shortest commercially available crank length that wasn't a track crank was 170 millimeters. So the only way of unimpinging the hip through the top of the stroke, raise the saddle height. If I had to give you a definition of optimal saddle height, it is about not impinging the hip through the top of the stroke and optimal extension of the leg, or not overextending the leg through the bottom of the stroke. This is where saddle height is a bit of a convoluted aspect of bike fitting, because there are so many factors that come into play. The height, the setback, the crank length, and also now what we've come to find is the stance. So one thing to consider, one thing to look out for is a smooth pedaling dynamic. That's what we're looking for. We're looking for it to be smooth and fluid. If you pay attention to yourself, when the saddle is too high, it results in what we call a staccato pedaling dynamic. By that I mean the rider reaches terminal extension of the leg, they get to overextension, and they accelerate through the bottom of the stroke. This is the dead spot, the illustrious dead spot that wouldn't exist if we didn't all run our saddles too high. So saddle height, if it's excessive, it's quite straightforward to adjust. You just knock it down a bit. Try it by 5 mil at a time. Try to do little bits at a time, and when you get to a point where you're starting to feel a bit of a hitch through the top of the stroke, pop it back up another 5 mil. Next on the list is poor handlebar rotation. We actually quite often see this on most bikes that come out of bike shops, but also supermarket bikes, whereby as a means of reducing the reach, the bars are rolled up, as simply to try and get these controls closer to you. There are lots of things you can do to mitigate this, one of which is a reduction in the stem length, but you can also go about optimizing the handlebar rotation and the control location within it. By that, I'm talking about rolling the bar down and bringing the control up, as we've referenced in other videos. This will typically offset the reach of the handlebar and make the reach a little bit shorter, and probably give you the desired effect of reducing the overall reach of the bike. A really basic guide for setting up handlebar rotation is get a little spirit level, and what we're looking to do is get the end of it more or less at 90 degrees with the ground, making sure that your bicycle is level, of course. More or less, it doesn't have to be perfect. Bike fitting is a game of inches, not millimeters. And then what you want to be doing is setting your hood up based independently of the drop, so of the handlebar. So you want to lock your handlebar in place, and you're going to peel back your hood. This handlebar has been poorly set up by not me. And then you loosen your hood, raise it up like so, get your angle to a point where you'd like it, not parallel with the ground. And there you have it. I'd recommend a little bit of angle. We said in previous videos that we wouldn't put a number on it, but then established that anywhere between 8 and 15 degrees was fine. A little bit of angle. You basically don't want it completely parallel with the ground, because it will result in you rolling the wrist like this, which is going to make it feel longer, but also going to put a lot of undue stress on your wrists, your elbows, your neck, and your shoulders. It's going to prevent you looking ahead. So this is only relevant if you use clipless pedals and shoes, so clippy pedals and shoes, like a road shoe like this, or a mountain bike style shoe, which has a two-bolt interface. Now, if you look at a lot of literature about where to set your cleats up, most of the stuff from the arcane that is still being circulated by people who don't know what they're on about talks about aligning the center of the cleat with the ball of the foot. 1975 called it wants its cleat location back. If you do that, you will basically get numb feet, arch pain, probably heel pain, probably gastroc cramping, and probably knee pain and saddle issues as well. What I tend to recommend is take the cleat further back. If you mark the shoe, even better yet, put a piece of masking tape on the side of it, mark where the ball of the foot is inside of the shoe, and then look to get that cleat between 20 and 30 millimeters behind the first metatarsal, behind the ball of the foot. You will get not only a more efficient pedal dynamic, you'll take a lot of stress off of the delicate structure of the forefoot, which has got it's got a dense capillary structure, lots of neural tissue there, and you will typically improve stability through the ankles, the knees, the hips, and the pelvis. It is worth noting that, if you take your cleats from here to here, you've effectively increased your saddle height. So if you do this at home, it's worth noting you want to drop your saddle height by 5 to 10 millimeters, because otherwise you're going to compound the issues that you're already experiencing. Excessive saddle tilt. This has been the recommendation of many physiotherapists and some bike fitters alike, who clearly haven't considered the ever-present force that is gravity. This was carried out typically by the people of British cycling to alleviate genital problems, and what it was intended to achieve was to drop the nose of the saddle, okay, I've done it quite aggressively here, to try and alleviate soft tissue pressure. There's a problem. This creates a slope. When you put something on a slope, guess what happens? It falls off the slope. And usually what that translates to is the rider gravitating to the nose. They typically get the associated genital problems anyway, as well as now probably anterior knee pain, cramping in the quads, and loads of weight on the front of the bike. Almost as bad is the saddle with a saddle being nose up. And this is something that quite often riders carry out as a means of stopping themselves falling into the front of the bike for lots of other reasons. Saddle too high, the reach is too long, the setback's not sufficient. But the problem with having the nose of the saddle up is it results in posterior rotation of the pelvis. In English, this is fairly problematic. Most people will typically compensate for the nose being up on the saddle by rolling their pelvis away as a means of alleviating genital problems. The problem with it is that it switches off the glutes, disengages your glutes, which is your primary extensors. They're responsible for delivering power through the pedals. But it also generates a lot more spinal flexion, so it makes the bike feel longer than it actually is. Because rather than your pelvis being neutral like so, which is what we're looking for on a bicycle, as you posteriorly rotate, your back, your lumbar spine, needs to carry out a much greater arc in order to get to the handlebars. So it typically translates to the bike feeling too long. It